Why the Zodiac Killer was never caught. Imagine the silent terror of California in the late 1960s. Couples enjoying quiet retreats under the stars suddenly turned into targets. Letters filled with cryptic symbols, eerie boasts, and chilling threats flooded the newspapers, each one signed Zodiac. The Zodiac Killer didn't just commit crimes. He etched his name into history as one of the most infamous and terrifying criminals ever. To this day, one question lingers like a dark cloud over the case. Why wasn't he ever caught? In this exploration, we'll dive deep into every factor that allowed the Zodiac to evade justice. From his cunning approach to crime to the limitations of law enforcement, we'll unravel the factors that solidified his ghostly, untouchable legend. Buckle up for a journey through history's most chilling cold case. The Zodiac Killer isn't just a name, it's an icon of fear. Between 1968 and 1969, the Zodiac murdered at least 5 known victims in Northern California. Men and women, mostly young, were the targets of his reign of terror. But many believe his true victim count may far exceed the confirmed 5. What made the Zodiac so unforgettable wasn't just his violence, it was his taunting messages. He sent letters to local newspapers, bragging about his crimes while daring authorities to catch him. The most haunting aspect of these messages, the inclusion of cryptic ciphers filled with strange symbols, some of which remain unsolved to this day. Unlike many killers who work in secret, the Zodiac basked in the spotlight. He craved attention, manipulating the media to spread his name like wildfire. And yet, despite all his provocation, the man behind the mask remains a mystery. The Zodiac first struck on December 20th, 1968, near Vallejo, California. A young couple, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, was found brutally murdered in their car on a deserted road. 6 months later, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau became his next victims. Mageau survived and gave a first chilling description: a man around 5'8" with combed brown hair and glasses. July turned to September, and the Zodiac struck again. This time, he attacked Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard at Lake Berryessa. Dressed in a hooded costume emblazoned with a cross-circle symbol, his signature mark, he viciously stabbed them both. Shepard later succumbed to her wounds, but Hartnell lived to tell the tale. His last confirmed murder occurred in October 1969, when Paul Stein, a San Francisco taxi driver, was shot in cold blood. What's eerie is how different this crime was from his previous murders. It left investigators puzzled about his motives. With each attack, the Zodiac moved unpredictably, leaving behind as much confusion as fear. So how did this killer, who taunted the police and media so openly, manage to slip through the cracks for decades? The answer lies in his calculated strategies and a bit of bad luck for authorities. The Zodiac wasn't a reckless criminal. He was meticulous. He carefully chose isolated locations for his attacks, ensuring witnesses were rare or non-existent. His use of disguises and lack of obvious patterns made him nearly impossible to track. He didn't just kill, he planned and executed each crime like a master strategist. Some experts speculate he may have had inside knowledge of law enforcement practices. His ability to predict police response times and avoid surveillance suggests he understood how investigations worked. Was he an ex-cop or someone with a criminal justice background? That mystery remains unsolved. Another key factor that worked in the Zodiac's favor was the era in which he operated. The late 1960s and early 1970s were a time when forensic science was in its infancy. Law enforcement didn't have the tools we associate with modern investigations. There was no DNA analysis, no surveillance cameras on every street corner, and limited methods for tracing evidence. Investigators relied on eyewitnesses and physical clues like fingerprints, both of which are prone to error and omissions. This technological lag left authorities grasping for leads, unable to pin down the killer with any certainty. Even when fingerprints were obtained, for instance in the case of Paul Stein's murder, they couldn't conclusively match them to any suspect. Today, those same fingerprints might have solved the case in a matter of days. Back then, they were simply another dead end. One of the most perplexing aspects of the Zodiac case is that his confirmed attacks seemed to suddenly stop. After 1969, there were no more murders definitively linked to him. Why? Some experts believe he achieved what he wanted: attention. The Zodiac reveled in the infamy his crimes brought, and once he had it, maybe the thrill of killing lost its appeal. Others theorize he continued to kill but wasn't connected to the crimes because of his differing methods, or he moved out of the area entirely. Another possibility is that he died, either naturally or by other means, or perhaps he was arrested for an unrelated crime and spent the rest of his life behind bars. The truth? We may never know. One of the Zodiac's most sinister trademarks was his use of coded messages. These ciphers were sent to newspapers alongside his letters and were filled with chilling boasts and threats. The most infamous cipher, known as the 340 cipher, was cracked only decades later by a team of private researchers in 2020. It revealed a chilling message. The Zodiac boasted that he wasn't afraid of death and that he was collecting slaves for the afterlife. Yet many of his ciphers remain unsolved, leaving a tantalizing mystery for true crime enthusiasts and code breakers alike. Could they hold the key to his identity, or were they simply another layer of chaos meant to confuse authorities? Over the years, the Zodiac case has seen over 2,500 suspects, yet none have been definitively identified as the killer. Names like Arthur Lee Allen have floated to the surface, but critical evidence to cement their guilt remains absent. Challenges such as poor interdepartmental communication between law enforcement agencies may have further crippled the investigation. Each police department worked independently, and without central coordination, vital connections may have been overlooked. What is it about the Zodiac Killer case that continues to fascinate and terrify us decades later? It's not just the heinous nature of his crimes, though that certainly plays a part. The Zodiac is a figure who thrives in the unknown. He represents the primal fear of the undetected predator, someone who defies authority and leaves chaos in his wake. He didn't just kill, he turned his murders into a game, one he played with the entire state of California. For true crime enthusiasts, the unsolved nature of the case invites endless theorizing, making everyone wonder if they could be the one to solve the puzzle. With advances in technology, could the Zodiac finally be unmasked? DNA phenotype analysis and genealogy tools have already helped crack other cold cases, like the Golden State Killer. Could the same fate await the Zodiac? In recent years, investigators have re-examined old evidence, hopeful that technologies like genetic tracing or enhanced fingerprint scanning will provide the break they need. But so far, the Zodiac's identity remains just as elusive as it was in 1969. The Zodiac Killer's story is one of violence, mystery, and haunting silence. Despite his boldness, taunting police, mocking the media, and leaving behind cryptic challenges, he slipped away, becoming a ghost who still casts a long shadow over true crime history. Perhaps one day, a breakthrough will finally identify the man behind the symbol. But until then, the case remains an unsolved labyrinth, one that draws us back time and time again, unable to look away from the darkness. What do you think allowed Ted Bundy to evade capture for so long? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button for more chilling stories from Evil Unmasked. Stay tuned for our next video where we explore another dark and mysterious case.